Snow was already settling on the cobblestone streets of France when a sound unfamiliar yet deeply comforting began to rise above the winter air. It wasn't French, it wasn't English, and it certainly wasn't part of the usual European Christmas soundtrack. It was warm, emotional, and unmistakably Filipino. As the first notes echoed through a public square, people slowed their steps, conversations softened, and curiosity quietly took over. This was the beginning of a moment no one planned but everyone remembered, a Filipino Christmas carol carrying the spirit of Paskong Pinoy into the heart of France, transforming an ordinary winter evening into something unforgettable. Christmas in France is known for its elegance, soft choirs, classical hymns, and centuries-old traditions passed down with care. Yet that evening, something new blended into the old. The melody carried joy shaped by long family dinners, laughter across crowded homes, and the unmistakable warmth of Filipino celebrations. Musika para sa Noche Buena wasn't just being sung, it was being felt. Passers-by who had never heard Tagalog before found themselves strangely moved, as if the song spoke directly to memories they didn't know they had. In that moment, culture stopped being a barrier and became a bridge. The voices belonged to ordinary Filipinos living abroad, caregivers, nurses, students, hotel staff, and cleaners, people who carried Christmas in their hearts long before December arrived. Far from home, they gathered after long shifts, bundled in coats, holding on to harmonies that reminded them who they were. For them, singing wasn't performance, it was survival. Each lyric held memories of lantern-lit streets back home, of children waiting past midnight, of families squeezed around tables filled with food and stories. France became the audience, but the song was rooted in the Philippines. As the carol continued, French locals began to pause. Some smiled, others filmed, a few closed their eyes. There was something disarming about the sincerity of the performance. It didn't ask for applause or recognition. It simply existed, confident in its emotion. Elderly couples leaned closer, children tugged at their parents' sleeves, and tourists forgot their itineraries. Music, after all, doesn't need translation when it carries truth. The Filipino carol didn't try to impress. It invited, gently and sincerely, into a shared moment of Christmas spirit. The lyrics spoke of togetherness, gratitude, and hope, values that felt universal, even if the language was new. While many couldn't understand the words, they understood the feeling. That's the quiet power of Filipino Christmas music. It carries humility and joy in equal measure. In the Philippines, Christmas begins when the months still feel far from December, and that devotion was audible in every note. The carol wasn't rushed. It flowed like a memory, reminding listeners that Christmas is not about perfection, but about presence. For the Filipinos singing, France was temporary, but Christmas was permanent. They had left behind families, traditions, and the familiar chaos of home to build lives abroad. Yet here they were, reclaiming a piece of home through song. Noche Buena in the Philippines isn't just a meal, it's a reunion of souls. By singing together in the cold European night, they recreated that warmth. The space between continents shrank with every harmony, proving that culture travels not in luggage, but in hearts. Soon, more voices joined. Some Filipinos from the crowd recognized the tune and sang softly at first, then louder, eyes shining with emotion. The square became a shared living room, the streetlights standing in for paroles, the winter air replacing tropical nights. Strangers became family for a few precious minutes. Even the French listeners sensed something sacred unfolding, an unspoken understanding that they were witnessing more than music. They were watching tradition survive, adapt, and flourish thousands of miles from where it was born. Phones were raised, not out of obligation but awe. Videos traveled quickly across social media, carrying the moment beyond the square. Comments flooded in from around the world, Filipinos feeling seen, foreigners feeling inspired. Many wrote that they didn't understand the words, but they felt the message. Others said the song reminded them of Christmas before it became commercial. In a season often overwhelmed by noise, this simple carol stood out for its honesty. What made the moment powerful wasn't the setting or the virality, it was the authenticity. There were no costumes, no stage, no microphones. Just voices shaped by distance, longing, and love. The Filipino tradition of singing together, especially during Christmas, has always been about community. In France, that tradition quietly rewrote itself, proving that identity doesn't fade with geography. It evolves, finds new spaces, and continues to touch lives in ways no one expects. As the final note lingered, applause broke out, not thunderous, but heartfelt. Smiles were exchanged between singers and listeners, brief nods of gratitude passing between cultures. The Filipinos bowed shyly, some wiping tears. Christmas had arrived early in that square, not because of decorations or markets, but because of connection. And as people slowly dispersed, one truth remained clear. A Filipino Christmas carol had gently, beautifully stolen France's heart. To understand why the moment resonated so deeply, one must understand Paskong Pinoy. In the Philippines, Christmas is less of a date and more of a season, one filled with anticipation, music, and shared humanity. Songs are everywhere, in jeepneys, malls, homes, and streets. Music becomes a countdown, a reminder that joy is coming. When Filipinos sing abroad, they aren't just performing, they are carrying an entire cultural calendar within them, one shaped by resilience and faith. France, with its structured elegance, met this expressive warmth in a way few expected. The contrast made the encounter even more powerful. Where French carols often sound refined and restrained, Filipino Christmas songs wear their emotions openly. They speak of longing, hope, and reunion. For French listeners, the carol felt refreshingly human. It reminded them that Christmas doesn't need to be flawless to be meaningful, it only needs to be sincere. The story behind the singers added another layer of depth. Many had spent years away from home, sending money back, missing birthdays and holidays. Christmas was often the hardest time. Singing together became their way of coping, of reminding each other they weren't alone. In France, that coping mechanism turned into a cultural moment. The audience didn't see sacrifice directly, but they felt its weight in the voices, steady, emotional, and proud. Children in the crowd were particularly drawn in. They swayed, clapped softly, and asked questions. Parents struggled to explain the language, but not the feeling. The carol created curiosity, opening doors to conversations about the Philippines, migration, and shared humanity. Music succeeded where explanations often fail. It connected generations and cultures in real time, without demanding anything in return. Some French listeners later described the experience as unexpectedly emotional. Others said it reminded them of Christmas before adulthood complicated it. That's the quiet strength of Filipino Christmas music. It strips the season back to its core. No extravagance, no pressure, just togetherness. The carol carried that simplicity into a space unfamiliar with it, and the response was immediate and genuine. Online, the moment continued to grow. Filipinos across Europe shared the video, tagging friends and family back home. Comments spoke of pride, nostalgia, and gratitude. Many said they felt closer to home just by watching. For those in the Philippines, seeing their culture embraced abroad was deeply affirming. It proved that their traditions mattered, not just to them, but to the world. The French reaction was equally telling. Viewers praised the warmth of the performance and the courage to share something personal in a public space. Some even searched for Filipino Christmas songs afterward, curious to learn more. Cultural exchange rarely happens through formal events alone. Often, it's born in spontaneous moments like this, where authenticity leads and curiosity follows. What stood out was how the carol created equality. There were no performers and audience, only people sharing a moment. The singers didn't dominate the space, they offered it. In return, the listeners received something rare, a reminder of what Christmas can be when stripped of excess. That mutual respect turned a simple song into a lasting memory. In many ways, the carol mirrored the Filipino diaspora experience itself, quietly present, deeply impactful. Filipinos around the world often contribute behind the scenes, yet their influence is profound. That night in France, their voices stepped forward, not to demand recognition, but to share joy. And in doing so, they were finally seen. As winter continued and decorations changed, the memory of that night lingered. For those who witnessed it, Christmas would forever carry the echo of a Filipino melody. For the singers, it became proof that home is not lost. It is shared, one song at a time. The story of Musika para sa Noche Buena in France is ultimately a story about belonging. It shows how people carry their roots wherever they go, shaping new environments with old traditions. The Filipino carol didn't replace French Christmas. It complemented it, adding a layer of warmth that felt both new and familiar. That balance is what made the moment so powerful. The story of Musika para sa Noche Buena in France is ultimately a story about belonging. It shows how people carry their roots wherever they go, shaping new environments with old traditions. The Filipino carol didn't replace French Christmas. It complemented it, adding a layer of warmth that felt both new and familiar. That balance is what made the moment so powerful. For Filipinos abroad, the experience reinforced something deeply personal. Their culture has a voice, and it deserves to be heard. Singing in a foreign land can feel vulnerable, but it can also feel liberating. That night, vulnerability became strength. The carol turned distance into connection and longing into celebration. France, known for art and appreciation of expression, responded with openness. The listeners didn't treat the moment as a novelty, but as a gift. That respect transformed the encounter into something meaningful rather than fleeting. It was no longer just a Filipino song in France. It was a shared Christmas memory. The carol also highlighted the universal need for community. In a world increasingly divided, moments like this remind people of what they share. Different languages, different histories, yet the same desire for warmth, family, and peace. The song didn't erase differences, it honored them, showing how beauty emerges when cultures meet with sincerity. For viewers online, the video became more than content. It became comfort. Many wrote that they played it during their own Noche Buena, even thousands of miles away. The song traveled further than the singers ever imagined, turning digital space into a global living room. Christmas, at its core, is about presence. That Filipino carol embodied presence fully, voices grounded in memory, hearts open to the moment. In France, presence became the language everyone understood. No subtitles needed. The impact of the moment continues quietly. Some of the singers still meet to sing each year, remembering how their voices once stopped strangers in their tracks. Others returned home with a renewed sense of pride. The song became part of their personal history, a reminder that even small acts can leave lasting impressions. For France, the memory stands as proof that cultural exchange doesn't require grand stages. Sometimes, it only takes courage and a song. The Filipino carol slipped gently into the winter air and stayed there, long after the final note faded. As Christmas traditions evolve, stories like this remind the world that authenticity will always resonate. When people share who they truly are, others listen. Paskong Pinoy did not arrive loudly, it arrived honestly, and that made all the difference. In the end, Paskong Pinoy, Musika para sa Noche Buena didn't just steal hearts in France, it connected them. Across cultures, languages, and continents, one Filipino Christmas carol proved that music remains the most powerful invitation to understand, to feel, and to belong.